Welcome to Old Guy Tech,
the OGT.TV recording studio.
Technology for the rest of us.
Hi, I'm Rob Charney, Old Guy Tech TV, and I'm here today with Joe Hoffman, who's running for judge in El Dorado County. So I want to say, Joe, thank you very, very much for coming into our little studio and
my pleasure,
giving us your point of view and
my pleasure.
and the whole part of it. And how exciting is this? Are you enjoying the actual running for the office?
I'm enjoying most of it.
Yeah,
I'm enjoying all the people I get to meet.
There you go.
The politics of it, I can mostly live without. It's a necessary evil as part of the process, but I look at it more as the people I get to meet. It's
Sure.
an opportunity that I wouldn't normally get, and I'm enjoying the heck out of that part.
Pretty neat. We have the same experience. We've met so many people doing this, and it's just great to get to know people and just to make them comfortable and talk a little bit about what's on their mind and why they're running. And so tell me a little bit, why did you decide to run for judge?
It's been a career goal in the back of my mind for as long as I can remember.
Okay.
I've always wanted to be a lawyer, and the end goal was always wanting to be a judge. The bigger question is timing of everything.
Right.
Why
right.
now is
right.
really the kind of the question. And the reality is I see some problems that I perceive
Yep.
that I think some are fixable. Some are probably beyond the scope of a sitting judge, meaning budgetary concerns from the state.
Right.
A sitting judge isn't going to have a whole lot of impact in that. But there are problems that are fixable. And from my point of view, I'm one of those kind of people that if you don't vote, you shouldn't complain.
Right.
And in a situation like this, if I have a complaint and I think I can do something about it, I'd be remiss to not step up and
Sure.
give it my best shot to do something about it.
You know, it's amazing. You just bring up a quick point. How many people don't vote? They're willing to bitch, but they won't do anything about it. And I pretty much discount that. I mean,
Yeah, and it's very, very relevant, especially in a judge race, because
Right.
a lot of people that vote won't go as far down on the ticket to vote for the judge race. So it's even more detrimental.
Judges
when
is
you
the
get down
tough
there.
one. Yeah. So how many people are running for how many seats?
3 people are running for 1 seat.
My goodness. Okay. So you got your hands full. Now there's a sitting judge right now, right?
Correct.
So it's kind of unusual for a sitting judge, if I'm not mistaken, to have a couple of people in particular running against him.
That's true.
So that speaks volumes just in itself.
It does, and it's a situation where he's a fairly recent appointee of
Right.
Governor Schwarzenegger.
Oh, okay.
And like I say, I just see things that rather than complain about, I think I could do better.
Right.
And I'm going to give it my shot to do better.
Sounds good. So let's get a little bit of history background. Where'd you go to law school?
Went to law school at Golden Gate University in San Francisco.
Okay, great. And how long have you been practicing?
I've been in practice. We just started our 18th year in January.
My goodness. You're not that old.
I like to hear that.
You look great. That's super.
I like to hear that.
That's super. Jeez, I'm jealous, man.
And I say we because it's my wife and I.
Good.
We met in law school and opened the office in January of '95 and have been going strong ever since, both family-wise and practice-wise.
That's good. And your practice is where?
I have an office in Folsom and I have an office in Cameron Park.
Okay, so you do practice in El Dorado County.
Yeah, our first office was Folsom, and we chose it because I had some family there, so there was clients there.
Sure.
And it was equidistant from all 3 courthouses.
Gotcha.
Placer, Sacramento, and El Dorado. So I've practiced in El Dorado County the entire time I've been in
Gotcha.
practice.
So even though you had your office in Folsom.
Correct.
Okay, that's great. So we covered law school and we covered your practice. How about your family? Wife, children?
Wife, like I said, is also an attorney.
Yeah.
And then I have a 12-year-old and a 10-year-old in 3 days.
My goodness gracious. Well, good for you.
And
Congratulations.
Coach everything. I've coached select soccer for my daughter.
Yeah.
I've coached AAU basketball for them.
Oh, that's neat.
All the rec sports they've played, I've coached.
No,
over
these
the
kids
years.
don't stand a chance, do they? 2 attorneys in one house?
They have learned to be and to cross-examine, I think.
That is too funny. I have another good friend whose kids are all grow up in a 2-attorney family house, and he says they don't stand a chance.
Yeah. I always say my children are doomed.
They really are. Well, one of the things that Old Guy Tech TV does, and I do in particular, we've got a couple of things that we really focus on. And one of the real major, of course, is the Second Amendment, and actually all the amendments to the Constitution, because we really feel that instead of interpreting it as it should be, they're making interpretations, they being the Supreme Court, that just sometimes make no sense. Why don't you tell us your stance on, well, we understand the First Amendment. We understand free speech, that you and I have the ability to sit here and talk about anything it is that we want to talk about.
Correct.
Let's talk about the Second Amendment.
Okay.
What's your stance?
My stance is that everyone has a right to own a firearm.
Okay.
I exercise that right myself, and I believe everyone has that right. My view in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights as a whole is they were written for a reason. My job as an attorney or as a judge is not to legislate those. My job is to enforce those.
Okay.
And that's my view on all of those.
And that, and your interpretation is that we are free to own firearms.
Yes.
Do you believe in limitations of that right?
There are some limitations that are in place that I think make sense. They are certainly moving in the wrong direction, however.
Right.
The things like forcing a bullet manufacturer to stamp each bullet is a little ridiculous.
Put a serial number every bullet.
It's going to price
it's
all of those things out of the market. They're
Right.
trying to figure out a way around the legislation.
Yeah.
Let's make it so costly that nobody in their right mind would be able to afford it.
Right.
And that's a wrong way to go about that.
Absolutely wrong. They got, unfortunately they got smart, because all of us that have been gun people for most of our lives, we knew what was the important part was the ammunition. Somebody woke up in that office and decided that, hey, we're going to make it odorous so that you cannot get ammunition, and that's what they're trying. Besides the bullet serial number, they're trying to do a serial number on the firing pin that leaves an indentation, and they're also trying to do a serial number on the bolt face of a gun that leaves a serial number, none of which are accurate, none of which are 100% reliable, none of which at this point just can't work. So,
and none of which have been shown that will in any way decrease crime issues.
No, and what happens is a typical knee-jerk reaction of the press that, you've probably heard of the bullet called the Black Talon. The Black Talon was nothing but a standard hollow point bullet that was painted black. Basically, that was it. All of a sudden, the news got a hold of it, and it was it would go through a vest, and it would do all that. It never did any of that. So that was a case of literally the press jumping on something, the public not knowing the truth, and it just ran with it, and it became very popular. Unfortunately, we're hearing these shooting situations that are happening throughout the country, and my point of view is they've been happening probably all along to a certain degree. An unstable person is an unstable person with or without a firearm. A hammer's kill just as well as a firearm kills. And that our press is choosing to focus on these issues and make them look evil.
Oh, absolutely.
And they're not. They're a tool. You agree?
I agree. 100%.
Okay, so they're like anything else. So one of the other things that's really important to gun owners is the issue of concealed weapons permits, CCWs. Where do you stand on those?
Well, I have a personal story with the CCW permit, which was my office was in Folsom, and when we first moved here, I lived in Folsom. And I had a CCW permit myself.
Mm-hmm.
A new chief came in and decided that he was not going to issue them anymore.
Right.
So I lost my CCW permit. Fortunately, our sheriff, who you know and who I respect for his stance on CCWs, is issuing them as he should.
Once again, right?
And as soon as Department of Justice does their thing, I will have one again.
Good for you. Good for you. Yeah.
I've been a gun owner my whole adult life.
Right.
And like I say, the CCW was a part of that. In areas of law that I've practiced in the past, I always felt more comfortable with that.
What if, let me just run something by you in your court. What if, one of the things, I've been a CCW instructor since the imposition of putting the classes, needing the classes instructor. And one of the things we talk about is concealment. Occasionally, a person will accidentally, and it's not brandishing, but will accidentally show their firearm. And it does make many people nervous. And the law enforcement is called. And unfortunately, depending where you are, law enforcement may or may have never seen a CCW. They don't know who the heck you are. More than likely, you're going to be arrested and your gun's going to be confiscated. This individual comes in front of you for arraignment. What are you going to do?
It's improper, unfortunately, in the Kansas judicial ethics to express my opinion on what I would do in a case that may come before me.
Okay.
So I hate saying that.
So you don't want to say it.
I hate saying that to you because it sounds like I'm trying to avoid the question.
Right.
But I'm very, very cognizant, especially in the judicial race, to not overstep my bounds of the judicial canons.
Okay, good.
It's one of those things that I look at it through this process that at the end of it, I'm going to be demanding that people call me Your Honor. And if I don't proceed in this process with honor, it's kind of disingenuous.
I won't put you in that position again. No, that's my fault. I should have known better. But anyway, I was curious. Well, okay. Well, those are all good. The answers sound really good. Well, I've got some of my fans out there in the blogosphere, shall we say, and some of them asked me questions. And some of the questions that they brought about, actually, I thought were pretty good. And one of the first ones was, as a judge, how do you feel about the mandatory sentencing laws?
Let me think. I like it because it provides consistency to a certain extent.
Okay.
And I think consistency is a key as in the judicial process, especially as we see the judicial process now. It's a key because it becomes a financial issue as well. So if there are mandatory sentencing or just the consistency in general, attorneys can then do their job to get to the end result without often clogging up the courtroom time.
Okay.
Meaning they can settle cases because they know where the judge is going to go. And I'm saying that in the general sense, not necessarily specific to the mandatory sentencing guidelines. But just the consistency in general is a big key factor that a lot of judges miss. And it creates a situation where if you know going to trial you have a 50% chance of winning, those are pretty good odds, and you'll take those. But if you know that with this set of facts, this judge is probably going to do this, you're more likely to try and get to that result in settlement as opposed to forcing the court to spend our, frankly, taxpayer dollar and valuable resources in a clogged courtroom to get to that same place. So I like the part of it that's consistent.
Okay.
But I have generally speaking, a lot of cases have specific facts that would bolster or take away from what the mandatory sentencing guidelines are.
Yeah, I would think that there's probably variances to any situation like that. So I would hope that a judge would feel the need to keep this kind of open under your discretion. And I guess that's where I'm leading with this. What about the 3 strikes situation?
I like the concept of 3 strikes. I'm not sure that it's working.
Okay.
It's clogging the system because people go to trial because they have no choice because it's my 3rd strike.
Right.
And so you get this financial constraint. And again, so much of what we're facing right now in the court system is financially based because we're losing judges, we're losing court staff, courtrooms are getting more clogged, taking forever to get things to trial. When you have a person up against their 3rd strike, they're going to trial.
Right. Right.
And that's a problem. I'm not sure the resolution of that, but that's a problem. Personally speaking, just me, I'd much rather see when we start talking about death penalty issues and things like that, enforcing what we have.
Yeah, it does seem kind of strange. I mean, I'm with you to a certain degree that I believed in the 3 strike laws, but I also believe now that they may not have worked the way we intended. I mean, a guy, let's face it, many criminals are repeat offenders anyway. They're going to be, and so fine, that's the way the case it is. But if we have a repeat offender who's and it's minor for robbery or not actually burglary more than anything else, or steals a stick of gum on a 3rd strike, sometimes you look at those sentences and you kind of go, where's the logic in that? But
that's where all the mandatory things become problematic.
Right.
I mean, a judge, ideally you're electing me because you trust in my judgment.
Right.
And by taking the ability for me to make my judgment known in the courtroom kind of defeats that purpose. Because if you say if this happens, then this has to happen.
Right.
You don't really
have
need
a choice.
me.
Right. Right.
If all you find out is did the first thing happen, the second one's done.
Right.
There's got to be some discretion in there.
Yeah, I would hope so. I would hope at some point in time that that maybe we changed this 3rd strike a little bit and we make it so that it makes more sense. I don't know. I'm not going to get into that right now. Let's see. What do we got here? What do you think of the recent trend of individual states readdressing perceived failures of the federal justice system? That's quite a feat.
I'm not really sure what you mean.
I don't either. Let's check. What did he mean by that? So do you know, here's a test. This is a school test from your law school. 5 theories of incarceration?
No.
I don't either. Somebody went to law school and is trying to trip me up here, huh? Okay. All right. So let's get off the map here a little bit. And the question here that I have is, ask Joe here, the other Joe, is asking, what do you think of the biggest mistakes are that police and prosecutors make when they're presenting the government's case at a trial?
I think there are times where they have a good case and occasionally are trying to make it ironclad when they don't need to go that far. I think the perfect example of that was, again, my opinion only, the O.J. Simpson case, where they had a good case, and I think they went overboard to try and make it ironclad, and then it looked contrived. And I think that's what the jury saw in that. And if I had to make an educated guess on why it went like it did, was because the jury thought that didn't make sense on a certain part, and threw the baby out with the bathwater on everything.
Yeah, I never looked at it that way.
Were probably sufficient on their own,
right,
to get where they needed to get to. But everything was so hyped up, especially because of the celebrity factors and all that,
right.
that I think they were just so concerned about making that case ironclad that it kind of lost something there in the translation. That's just, and again, that's a educated guess.
I think that's pretty good. That makes a lot of sense to me. I never looked at it at that angle. So, well, you know what? He's in prison anyway, so he's where he belongs, right?
Karma works.
Karma works, huh? Yeah. Do you have some people call it a sixth sense when you're a judge. You're sitting there and you can look at a defendant sitting there and think, there's something hinky about this. Do judges get that way too?
I imagine they do. They're people.
I'm just wondering.
At the end of the day, they're the same person they were the year before they were elected. They have the robe and a new job now.
Yeah.
I think one of my strengths, I perceive it as my strength, having been in private practice for 18 years,
right,
and dealing with people and dealing with witnesses and clients, is I'm a pretty quick read of people. You have to be in this job,
right?
And obviously, as a judge, you have to step back from that read, because I'm supposed to make the ruling on the evidence presented. And especially in a criminal trial where the defendant may not even testify, to make a knee-jerk reaction based on a first impression or appearance would be totally and completely wrong.
Right.
So it's more based on the evidence. But when a witness is testifying, I think logically it's going to come in some sense of form of your read of people,
right,
to determine truthfulness, and that's part of your job as judge, is determine their veracity and how truthful they are. And a lot of that's going to be based upon what you perceive of them.
That makes sense. Have you ever, and I've spent, one, I spent a year on the grand jury. Two, I've been on a number of trials. And have you ever watched a defense attorney that just absolutely went down the wrong path? And I mean, I'm just wondering, is this something that you see every now and then? Is this something, or that you can't even talk about? I don't know.
No, you see, again, I've been in practice for a long time, and my practice has been mostly civil practice. And whether it's defense counsel in a case I'm the plaintiff, I represent the plaintiff on, or just two parties in a divorce action, you often see people miss the big picture. And they get so focused in on a point that they don't grasp the totality of it.
Right.
It's a common mistake for a young lawyer because, there's no practical part of law school, generally speaking. You could take a seminar or things like that, but it's classwork. So as a new lawyer, when you get out, if you don't have a really good mentor and you're just on your first trials or that sort of thing, you can get bogged down in minutia and miss the big picture.
Right.
And it's going to be a challenge as a judge, frankly, to not insert myself in that role.
Oh, yes.
Because my role, and I view this very seriously, my role is to sit back and let the attorneys do their job,
right,
and then I'll do my job.
Right.
My job is not to litigate the case. Some new judges have a difficult time with that. I think I'll be fine with that because I've been thinking about it for a long time.
Well, you've been practicing for quite a while, so you're not a newbie. You've done a lot, so that makes a big difference. I think for a judge, a history of practicing for a number of years is very good. I think it's very important. I have seen cases where people have been fairly new, ended up running for a judgeship, getting it, and they're so wet behind the ears they're not certain of what they're doing.
And that's a big difference between me and my two opponents this time, is that I have been in private practice for the entire length of the time, and I've been in this county. And you'd be surprised at how different an El Dorado County is from a Sacramento County.
Right.
Even though they're adjacent.
Right.
And some of the people work in Sacramento but live here.
Right.
They're very, very different. And if you're not practicing kind of in the trenches, I think you miss something in that.
Right. Right. Well, that makes sense. So that's a good one. Now, you said you do mostly civil. Have you done some criminal work?
I have not done criminal. And you're going to laugh at my explanation, but it's been my explanation forever. So I went to law school knowing that I was going to open my private practice right after law school. So I finished law school, took and passed the bar, opened my office. We got bar results in November. My office opened January. So there was no real gap.
Yeah.
To do criminal law, and I was encouraged to do criminal law at the beginning because it's great experience, but to do it in a private practice setting, the only way to do that is to do defense work.
Right.
I have a firm belief in the Constitution. I absolutely believe anyone accused of a crime has a right to zealous counsel. They don't have a right to me, however. And my viewpoint was, it's not a good day in court to get somebody that I know is guilty off. And that's often what defense attorneys do. And again, that's not a knock on defense attorneys.
Right.
There's a definite role.
They're doing their job. They're the advocate.
They're an advocate, and they're
Right.
a zealous advocate, and
Right.
the person accused has a right. It just was not something I ever felt comfortable with. So I never did criminal work. And you don't do private district attorney work. The
Yes.
district attorney does that.
That doesn't work that
so
way.
it was only defense was the only option. I just never felt comfortable with that.
So how are you going to feel as a judge if a situation like that? A jury comes in, you've got somebody that you feel is obviously guilty, but the jury comes in and it's innocent.
That's the process.
Yeah.
That's the process.
It's about the only thing you can do.
It is, and,
Yeah.
and you do your job, and that's why there's a jury in place.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really what it comes down to. And if I did my job correctly, I should not be 100% convinced that one way or the other.
Yeah.
But it's the jury's role at that point. The case is in the jury's hands.
Help me a little bit here understand something. I've seen, probably in television, I've seen a situation where a judge has actually polled the jury, has asked on a one-on-one basis, do you agree with this? And actually has taken the time to ask questions. Is that something that a judge normally does, or can do, or will do?
Counsel has the ability to ask for the jury to be polled.
Okay.
And what they're doing at that point is they're making sure that it gives the jury one last opportunity to say, I don't agree with that ruling, or I was strong-armed into that ruling by the other 11. It gives them the ability to hear it from each juror that they agree with the verdict. And it's the counsel's right to ask for that.
Are members of the jury ever intimidated into such a faction that they could actually change their mind while they're standing there?
They can change their mind when they're standing there. Does it happen? It's one of those things as a lawyer that I've always been bothered by the fact that whenever I get called for jury duty, I don't get picked because I'm a lawyer and nobody really wants me on the jury.
Right.
I would love to see the dynamics in the jury room. It's something that we don't get the ability to do. It's a very private situation.
Right.
They don't let cameras in. They don't let
That's
other
right.
people in. So you never know what happens truly in that jury room. But I could envision a scenario where a person that is on the one side of an 11-1 debate back in chambers and jury
Right.
box ends up flipping for the sake of either intimidated or being done, and in a question like that, when the jury's being polled, could change their mind.
What happens then to that case? I mean, this is my idle curiosity now. Let's say
I don't know with 100% certainty. My guess is it would be back for further deliberations.
Send them back in.
And if they can't reach a unanimous consent, then it's a hung jury and case gets retried.
I saw a lot of different things on the grand jury after serving a year, and I got to see people do some pretty strange things sometimes, and so that's made me wonder about this. So that was great experience. If any of you are out there and you feel like you want to spend some time and know what the system's all about, go spend a year on the grand jury. It's really impressive.
I'll bet that's an eye opener.
It was fun. It was fun. It really was. It took a lot of work, a lot of time, but we did some good work, so we really liked that. Do you have you may not even be willing to talk about this, but do you have a particular case that really stands out to you that you're really proud of?
I'm proud of the cases that go to trial, frankly, and that's almost all of them, because it's a certain type of personality, it's a certain type of preparation to go and do a good trial. And when you finish a good trial, having prepared well, presented the case, oftentimes regardless of the outcome, but obviously you like to win when you're in trial.
Sure, right.
Those are the ones I'm most proud of, because it's a start to finish type of thing. From the very first time the client came into my office to the judge making their decision. Right. It's nice to have that totality of the package. And there's a lot of situations in civil law where that first attorney isn't necessarily the trial lawyer. Right. Because either they switch or it's a bigger office and somebody else handles trials. So as a sole practitioner, my wife and I, being able to take a case from beginning to end, the whole way through trial, is a fulfilling experience.
I bet it is. I bet it feels really good. Really good. We're starting to get down in time here a little bit, so I want you to kind of tell us your passion, again, why you're running, any information that you want those listeners out there to know about, and just take the next couple of minutes and just tell us what you'd like to get the message at.
Okay. So passion, I start with my kids. I mean, clearly, coaching sports, doing those sorts of things are the best part of my day. Yeah. These days, I don't get much of that time right now, but it's part of the process, and I understand that. And fortunately, it's been great to see my kids understand that. Mm-hmm. To get them involved in the political process at 12 and 10. My son's out there with me putting up signs. He gets the concept. He understands. He's learning why signs work. Yeah. We were joking about one sign he didn't like, but he remembered exactly what was written on it. And the lesson being, well, then it worked. Because you remember.
Yeah.
So that has been really fun to see my kids get to be part of the political process and really understand it. And learn to communicate with adults. I mean, that's a skill that's lost in a lot of youth. And so because my kids are involved in this process and then go to events with me, they're interacting with adults and very powerful people in the county and in the community, and watching them learn how to do that interaction, and we talk about it a lot and they get better at it, is one of my passions.
Yeah.
And one of the side benefits of this process. The thing I would want people to know is that having been a business owner and a lawyer for 17 years means something to me, and I think it translates to the community at large. It's a certain type of personality that runs a business. You're financially centered. You understand the concept of money. You understand the concept of time, because as a business owner, you don't have that much of it seems, at times. And that translates well to the job I'm looking to get, which is a judge. Mm-hmm. Having a judge that's conscious of time, that's conscious of money, makes a big difference in the county. And I hope that translates when people hear that, because they think, well, you're getting paid either way, or you're just sitting there making a ruling. It doesn't matter how many cases. But it does, as a human being, as a taxpayer, as a county participant, it matters. I want to get cases through that system. A case that flounders in the system costs us all money, costs the poor litigants more money than it should. And people think, well, the attorneys did fine. And yes, financially they may have, but they're frustrated by the process, because they would have rather get that case completed and move on to the next case, as opposed to have one flounder and languish for 4 years in the system because they can't get a courtroom.
Right.
And again, being a business owner and cognizant of that, I think translates very, very well to the bench. The other thing I encourage them to do is really do the research on the candidates. It's missing in our system today for people to do the research. Listening to these types of videos, going to the websites, learning as much as you can about these people. Once you see the differences between us, because the three of us are very different, I think it makes it easier to make that choice. I think I'd be their choice if they do that research. The challenge is getting people to care, getting people to vote, and getting people to know.
Yep.
And the one thing I want to add is this process has been humbling in a lot of ways. It's been humbling because as a business owner, sole practitioner, my group of colleagues are the attorneys I go against.
Right.
I don't have an office full of 50 lawyers.
Right.
My wife and I, and the attorneys I see are the ones that I'm usually against.
Yep.
And in this process, they've rallied. They've really come out and say, we know I'd be the best judge in this scenario, and we're willing to put our names on the line, which if you think about it, they may have to appear before the other guy. Mm-hmm. So to put their name on the line and say, notwithstanding all of the potential political issues, he's the best guy, put my name on the dotted line, use my name in your website, I'll stand up beside you, not just way behind you, but beside you, to say you're the best. And that's humbling when you've been against these guys for 18 years.
Oh, yeah.
And they've done that. Having someone like Judge Phimister, who's one of the longest tenured judges in the county, very, very well respected, come out and publicly say, I think Joe Hoffman is the best choice for this job, when his colleague is also running for this position. I think it's in 18 years, I can tell you it's the first time in El Dorado County that's happened. I've talked to lawyers that have been here a lot longer than me that say they've never heard of it either.
I sure haven't.
And to have a judge come out and have the conviction to stand up and say, he's the best guy for this job and I want what's best for the county and I think you should vote for him, means more to me than I could ever relay to you. And when you look at the website and see the list of endorsements, they're all people that know me. It's not a cold call to some random lawyer to say, hey, I'm running for judge, endorse me. And he goes, well, I don't know anybody else, so fine, use my name.
Right.
That's not the case at all in any of my endorsements. They all know me. They know me from either the community activities, the legal community, or practicing law in the courthouse. And that's huge, and it's humbling. In fact, some of the clerks at the courthouse have come out and publicly endorsed me.
Wow.
And if you look at that list and look at the departments they work for, you'd be very surprised to see some of the names on that list. And it's a risk for them,
sure,
without doubt.
Yeah.
But they're so strong in their conviction that they're willing to do it. And
that's wonderful.
That means more to me than anything.
I bet it does. Oh, well, that's great. That's a good story. I mean, you're right. Somebody in the court working there now, Judge Phimister had had a lot to do with us meeting and bringing it in here, because I've known Doug for a long time, and I really value his opinion. So I'm really glad we got the opportunity to talk, and I really very, very pleased that you decided to take a little bit of time with us here at Old Guy Tech TV. As you know, we're trying to get the message out for everybody, and we're doing really well in El Dorado County, and we hope we can do well for you as well. This video will be available for your website if you want, however you want to use it. It's available to you. And again, I can't thank you enough for coming in, Joe, and spending some time with us and listening to some of my crazy questions and answering them. But I want to thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
And,
the opportunity to speak to people is what it's all about.
It's all about.
That.
Yep. And you're going to have a hard road to hoe, but I think you're going to do really well. And I really appreciate you coming in. And hey, for you that are listening in on our show and taking the time to view these videos and see Old Guy Tech TV and visit, thank you very much. We've got people like Joe Hoffman coming in, and all the others that we've interviewed all the way up to Ted Nugent. We've had some pretty good run here, and we want to keep it going. So you keep it going too. You get educated out there. You figure out what the candidates that represent you the best, and you figure out how to vote for it. Just don't take a ballot that comes in the mail, because believe it or not, those are paid for. So it may not be the right person. Take the time, educate yourself. Thank you for coming to see Old Guy Tech TV. We'll see you next time. Hi, I'm Rob Charney, Old Guy Tech TV, and I'm here to talk to you today about Windfall and the El Dorado County Fair. The largest event of El Dorado County will soon be here. Don't miss this opportunity to promote and build your business by advertising in the 2012 El Dorado County Fair Guide, published exclusively by the Windfall. The El Dorado County Fair Association is very excited to partner with Windfall again this year. Last year was such a success, we are thrilled to work with them again. The exposure that the El Dorado County Fair has in our community is amazing. We don't want you to miss it. Jody W. Gray, CEO of El Dorado County Fair, just told us this. So distributed in the Windfall and El Dorado Hills Telegraph, June 8th, 2012, and available to the public at the welcome information booths at each entrance during the fair. This user-friendly guide features a map of the fairgrounds, event, vendor locations, and includes the schedule of events. Reservations are required, space is limited, circulation is 20,000 plus copies, and the deadline is 5/25/2012. So make sure you get your ad into the Windfall today. Tell them Rob sent you.